I just want to say a few things about it before I get into some questions. To me, narcissism is such an important topic to talk about. It's such a big issue that we're understanding more and more in our world today, and the damage that narcissists can do within relationships and in countries, etc. But partly it's also a fad. Everybody wants to talk about narcissism. Everybody's got stuff about narcissism. And so what I've seen over the years is when kind of topics become faddish, there's a lot of misinformation that begins to develop about them, and that can do a lot of damage and mislead people. And so part of why I want to do it is just to kind of clear up some of that. But the other thing that I've seen is a lot of people that do this in a faddish way. Narcissism has been pathologized as these terrible people, these evil people. And there's an element of narcissism we're going to see where that the person is kind of in that evil place. But what we have to really understand, I think, up front is that narcissism, to me, is on a spectrum. So there's very mild to extreme narcissism, and that's what most of us think of when we think of narcissism, is the extreme narcissistic personality disorder, bordering on sociopath, psychopath, all of those things. I think everybody has narcissistic tendencies. It's part of our brain's priority to survive when life is hard, that we become narcissistic. And what comes out of complex trauma to me is the person is in survival mode all the time because there's danger all the time. And so narcissistic tendencies, coping patterns can develop that aren't necessarily making them a narcissist, just means the potential's there. There's tendencies that are there. And usually you don't see those tendencies in adult life unless their limbic brain is triggered by fear or anger or stress. Then all of a sudden they're back into a survival place and the narcissistic tendencies come out. Now that doesn't make them a narcissist. It just means they have tendencies, and we all do. And it's when we're in our limbic brain intensely that those tendencies tend to come out. What I want to talk about mainly is that kind of pure narcissist at the extreme end of the spectrum of narcissism that would be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And what I want to do is really show that this, to me, comes out of severe trauma. And so it's not something that they're born with. It's not something that, some people are just evil. No, this was a severe way of trying to survive, severe trauma, and they have got stuck in these coping strategies that now they just are not going to give up. So I'm going to share my screen with you, just because I want to go through some of the tendencies that I got to figure out how to. I was going to share my screen with you, and I can't get it. So what I'm going to do is just go through kind of 18 characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, so the first characteristic of, so if a person went to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and they would have to have the majority of these characteristics in order to be diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And so the first one is that they believe that they are special and unique and can only be understood by other special or high status people. And what's significant to me in that is not only that they think they're special and unique, so that they're just smarter than everybody, more gifted than everybody, but if you challenge them or if you criticize them, then they go to, well, you don't understand me because you're not special. You're not unique like me. Only very unique people can understand me. And so what comes out of that is that gives them an out of all criticism, because anybody that tries to criticize them, they can now say, well, you aren't special like me, so you can't understand me. And so therefore you can never, in their mind, criticize them or give them feedback. But they believe they're more important than others, and they exaggerate their achievements, their talents, and they expect to be recognized as superior. And so this is just very common, that they just place themselves above everybody, as better than everybody, more gifted than everybody. And then it goes the fourth one, they have fantasies about their power, success, and attractiveness. So they have this rich fantasy life of how great they are, all that they're going to achieve, how everybody likes them, how everybody looks up to them. And then they have an insatiable appetite for attention, praise, and admiration. And this is going to be a key thing in understanding them, is this is an appetite that can never be satisfied. They always need to have a supply of somebody validating them, praising them, giving them positive feedback and admiration. And we're going to look at why that is in just a bit, but it's a huge part. Then they think others are envious of them. So they think everybody's looking at them, wishing they could be like them. Then they do lots of image management. So they associate with other high status people so that you go, wow, look who they hang around with. That enhances their image. And they try to control how other people think about them. So they're always dropping little things. If you make a comment and it's not 100% in line with what they want their image to be, then they will try to correct your thinking about them. Then there's just an arrogance, a smugness about them. Then they can never be wrong. If they are, they don't accept that. They now twist it and turn it back and blame somebody. And so if you try to confront them, they will twist it and somehow make it your fault. They fail to recognize the needs and feelings of others. So a lack of empathy, a lack of just awareness of others as humans with needs, a strong sense of entitlement, and that has an expectation of special treatment. Then they don't think the rules apply to them, that somehow they're the exception to every rule. And then they're exploitive of others. So they don't know how to love others. They only use others. They take advantage of others to meet their own ends. Everything's like a chess match to them. People are pawns. And so they're manipulating and moving people, using people in order to get what they want. And so in interacting with them, they can act one way, but you always suspect a hidden agenda is happening, that they're working towards something and you're part of their chess game at the moment. Many, if they've done this for years, just become very, very good at it. And often you don't even realize they're doing it unless you're kind of an expert in detecting it. And then for many, they get so good at it, they know what form of manipulation will work best with what person. And so with one person, they might use something totally different from what they would use with another person. And then they just need to be in control. They must get what they want. And so they can be the nicest people in the world until they're triggered by the potential of losing control, and then they can get very angry and lash out, and you just see a very different side. Often extreme feelings of jealousy and very easily hurt, hypersensitive to any sense of rejection, people talking disrespectfully about them, and then they need a mirror. That is, we also use the term echo. They need somebody in their life who's constantly reflecting back to them how wonderful they are, how gifted they are, how talented they are. So that's kind of the 18 characteristics that are used to diagnose. So what I want people to hear is, when I work with people, I don't usually even care about a diagnosis, because to me, those are symptoms, those are coping patterns from the underlying issues, which is the deep trauma and hurt. But if a person has some of those characteristics, all of those are maladaptive characteristics that the person, I hope, will be willing to look at, to go, why am I needing to manipulate all the time? Why am I jealous all the time? Why do I just use people? Those all, to me, each one is significant because it points to a deeper issue that the person really needs to look at. So let me go to what has happened over the years. Is initially people saw narcissists, psychiatrists, and they just said, wow, those are maladaptive characteristics. And they began to kind of highlight and bullet point the things that were true of them that wouldn't be healthy, wouldn't be in normal, healthy relationships. And that's where they made this list of 18 things. The question then became, well, why are they like that way? And that's where there's been all the confusion. And so some said, oh, they must have been born that way. That must be something in their brain. There must be some cognitive thing. And so all the different theories have come along, and I don't know that there's ever been a totally agreed upon theory. There's agreement around the characteristics, but the cause is really the issue. And in my mind, the world of complex trauma has really opened up to me a very clear picture that makes sense of why a person would have all of these characteristics. And so, in my mind, narcissism comes out of extreme trauma, which is extreme pain that you can't resolve, and extreme shame. So go back to a child that is abused, severely neglected, severely abused, abandoned. Like, that is a lot of pain for a little child. That is basically saying to the child, you are a zero. You don't even matter. You are despicable. Nobody wants to be with you. We just want to abuse you, get rid of you. And so there's the ultimate of abandonment in all of that extreme trauma. The problem to the child is they believe it. They believe it's their fault. I am a loser. I am no good. Nobody would love me. Nobody would want me just the way I am. Anybody that gets to know me will abandon me, reject me. That's a painful belief to live with. But everything in their experience seems to say that it's true. The next problem for them is, so they've got this external stuff happening that's painful, developing in a belief that's super painful. They can't resolve any of it. They can try to be better, but they still get abused and rejected. And so it's unresolvable pain. And nobody wants to live with unresolved pain. That's so severe. The brain says, I'm looking for solutions. I'm not finding a solution. So what the brain begins to do, and begins to explain narcissism, the brain begins to shut down systems that cause pain. So number one, it shuts down empathy. It says if you care for people, it only hurts more when they reject you. So don't care for anybody. Don't love. Love leads to pain. So shut down love, shut down empathy. Then if you show emotions like crying or sadness, that gets you hurt, that gets you punished, that causes more pain. So let's shut down our emotions. Who needs emotions? Let's just allow anger. That's the only one that doesn't hurt us. So you shut down that now. Then, you know what? You can't trust anybody. Everybody that you trust lets you down and hurts you. So let's shut down trusting people. People are not to connect with. So let's shut down connection because connection leads to pain. Let's shut down authenticity because authenticity gets you judged and rejected. So let's shut that down. Let's shut down our conscience because if you care about something, whether it's right or wrong, and that you might have hurt somebody, that just causes more pain. So let's shut down our conscience. Let's shut down vulnerability. Every time you're vulnerable, you get hurt. So what you begin to realize is in order to survive, the brain has shut down every system that adds beauty and intimacy and connection in human relationships. It shuts down the very things that enrich life and make it meaningful. And so that's what a narcissist is. It's a person who shut down everything that they thought made them weak and caused them pain. So in their mind, they think they're becoming stronger. But what I want you to see is they're actually becoming less and less human. They're becoming maybe stronger physically and that they're waterproof from a lot of things, but they don't have feelings. There's an emptiness inside. There's an unresolved pain at the subconscious level. There's a deep, deep belief at a subconscious level that I'm the problem. I'm not good enough. I'm a loser. I'm a zero. And so they're becoming less human, trying to be stronger, but they're actually becoming weaker. They're becoming stuck in that childhood state where they've shut everything down and tried to build defenses to survive. And that's, to me, really what is happening in a narcissist. So if you look into the emotional world of a narcissist, the internal world, what you find is this huge void, this huge emptiness, this huge amount of subconscious pain. And they've pushed it down, trying to deny it, trying to say it's not there. And so now what they have to do is try to feel better. And so here's where you go to the next step of narcissism within the child. So they've shut a whole bunch of stuff down. Now they have to try to compensate for that core message that I'm a loser. So now their compensation is I have to be better than everybody. Secondly, they have to try to compensate for all the emptiness and negative feelings inside, but they can't produce any positive feelings themselves. So they need others to produce positive feelings for them. They need others to be the supply of positive feelings. And so here's what they begin to do. They act superior. I'm better than everybody. They tell themselves all those lies. They look at little things in their life to try to prove that. But then they have three types of supply to feel superior and to have positive emotions. So the first is they're going to use their external environment, their image. So they're going to have big house, lots of money, position of power. They're going to be in a position where they control others, where they're above others. And if they're really talented and gifted and successful, that's going to give them one source of supply. They're going to get admiration. They're going to get people that look up to them, people that want to work for them. All of that's going to feed and supply what they're missing in that big emptiness and make them feel good about themselves. See, that proves I'm superior to you. See, that proves that people adore me, that I am special. But then the second thing that they need is people in their life who are the mirrors or the echoes that tell them. And so people will go, "You're so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. You're just an amazing person." And so they're the hero over and over again in relationships, or they hire people or they date people who have really low self-image, who just are wanting somebody that they can look up to. And so they have this constant supply coming from people who adore them, who echo to them that they're wonderful. But then the third thing that they do to try and get that sense of power, that sense of good feeling, is control, power, even cruelty. Because if I can put you down, that makes me feel good. If I can hurt you, that makes me feel good. If I can control you and what you do, that makes me feel good. So that's the three different types of supply that they need to try to fill the emptiness. The problem is it never works. They just need more and more and more. It's a monster that can never be satisfied. And so if you begin to see all of narcissism from the perspective of complex trauma, to me, all of a sudden you go, wow, it all makes sense now. This is a person stuck in severe shame, in severe pain that they shove down. They're trying to compensate for. They're trying to create positive feelings about themselves and positive emotions through others. And they've set up a life and a coping style where there's lots of people that will give them the supply they need. If they can get positions of power, then they can be cruel to others and they can have all of that sense of greatness, and it seems to work. And they just get stuck in doing that. The problem is that in their mind, being a narcissist is the best thing in the world, especially when there's lots of supply available. Everybody in their life is going to get wounded. Everybody in their life is going to experience their cruelty, their disrespect, their putting them down. Everybody in their life is going to go, this narcissist needs to change. The only person who doesn't agree with them is the narcissist, because to them it's working. And so the damage that they do is massive, especially the more power that they have. But if people start walking out of their life, not a problem. There's billions of people in the world, and it'll be easy to find more. And so they just keep moving around. So that leads to kind of the next piece, just to kind of give the picture here. And that is entering into a relationship with a narcissist. And typically how this works, there's two stages. And so the first stage is the initial stage, and it starts off with what we call love bombing or the honeymoon stage. And this is the narcissist with his best foot forward, with all of his masks in place, and they meet somebody that they sense similar shame issues as they have in themselves, and they love bomb them. They are super nice to them. They give them stuff. They rescue them. Looks like they're meeting their needs, all of that. What's not made clear is that there's huge conditions on this. You have to adore me back. You have to do what I want. I'm doing this to gain power over you. This is a form of manipulation. But they love bomb, and the other person is drawn into the web and goes, this is so wonderful. What a wonderful person. And the narcissist is never angry, never cruel in this stage. This is a wonderful world, a honeymoon. There's no conflict. The narcissist just does what the other person wants. It just is wonderful. And so the other person falls in love. And there's an intensity of the love oxytocin in the brain that just feels so good. For the first time, they feel seen. For the first time, they feel their needs are being met. Somebody gets them. Somebody's there for them. Somebody will never leave them. Somebody is constantly attuned to them, constantly present to them. And so they get drawn into this thinking that they are madly in love with this person. But then you go to the second part of this, and what you have to understand is the narcissist isn't satisfied because he gets tired of this person. This person now is giving them some supply of admiration, but they're so needy. They got so many problems. They're a bit of a burden. And the narcissist hasn't dealt with his own shame issues. He hasn't dealt with the real cause of his problems. And so there's an ongoing emptiness and discontent. And this person's not cutting it anymore. So he begins the second stage, which is the devaluation stage. And that's where he starts putting the person down. He starts neglecting them. He starts taking shots at them, starts criticizing them, starts trying to cut people out of their life, control them more, starts to gaslight them and make it their fault and twist everything to make that they're bad, they're the problem. And so that begins to happen. Now, what's important to understand at this stage is that both are afraid of abandonment. The narcissist has been abandoned, never wants to be abandoned again. And so he's wanting this relationship because it does provide some supply. The other person doesn't want to be abandoned by this person that they're so madly in love with. And so they both start trying to conform. So we're not going to be abandoned. And they try to get it back to the honeymoon again, to the love bombing. So they might have a bit of a spat, a bit of a fight. And then they're both, oh, I'm so sorry, let's get back to being on our best behavior. So the cycle begins where you go love bombing, honeymoon, then tension builds during the devaluing stage, and then there's an explosion. And that can go on for months and months and even years. What happens in that cycle is the honeymoon love bombing stage gets shorter and shorter and shorter. The devaluing stage gets longer and longer, and then the explosions get worse and worse until you get to a point where there's no honeymoon stage anymore. It is constant devaluation.
Okay.
And that's where the person finally goes, maybe this person's either changed dramatically or I never saw the true person at the beginning. I only saw a fake. And that's a very confusing time because there's part of their brain that thinks it was so real in the beginning. That was them. They were wonderful. If I could only get them back to that. And so the person in the relationship tends to keep trying to change the narcissist, to get them to go back to being that wonderful person, thinking it was genuine. It never works. And so at some point, the narcissist will get tired of it and go to the discard stage. And that is, I'm going to get rid of you and I'm going to find a new supply that's more exciting, that gives me more positive energy and emotion. And so they can discard, but they don't usually discard the person until they have somebody else ready and waiting. What will happen often as this is breaking down is they will have different affairs going on because they are looking for their next supply. They're never satisfied with just one person. And so there's always promiscuity and different stuff going on. And the whole sexual component usually becomes a big part of their supply apparatus. So that is kind of how it works out. So that leads to the questions. But what I want, before I get into the questions, well, this is kind of a question. It's, we get in our LIFT program people all the time that come to us and they realize that they're in a relationship with a narcissist. And so the question is, now what do I do? And it's such a difficult question because sometimes, and very rarely, will the narcissist let you just leave their relationship and say, hey, this is not working, I'm gone. Because they won't do that, because to a narcissist, that means you're putting them down. You're exposing that they aren't as good as they want everybody to think. And so that's a narcissistic wound that you're inflicting. And so when they are wounded by you, I'm going to wound you back. Revenge is now necessary, and that leads to a real cruelty. But then I must control you even more, so that nobody will ever judge me that I lost somebody, that I wasn't good enough for somebody. And so they will try to tighten up control. And so what we call this, and it's not a very technical term, but it's become the term used, is they will try to hoover you back in as if they're a vacuum cleaner. And so they will go back to love bombing to try to win you back. I'm going to change, I'll get help, I'll get counseling. They don't mean it. They'll say, I'm sorry, they don't mean it. It's all manipulation to try to get you to come back to them. And they'll be nice for a little bit, but then the devaluation will start again. And so that then can start to be a cycle for a while. So getting out of a relationship can be extremely challenging. But what I want people to hear that come to our program is this. I don't want you to come to our program and just make your entire focus understanding the narcissist and wondering how you could change the narcissist and improve your relationship. That, to me, you're going to get some of that information, but it's probably going to be a waste of your time and energy. I want you to focus on, why did I get attracted to this relationship? What is it in me that caused me to be attracted to a narcissist? Because if you don't sort that out, then you're going to leave this relationship and you'll just be attracted to another narcissist. So, as terrible as the narcissist is, you have to look at there's something in you as well that is part of this problem that needs to be looked at. And it's usually your shame issues that need to be looked at. Because shame, to me, there's a template that happens in childhood. So most people that are attracted to narcissists, their early relationship template was that they had a parent, mom or dad, who was narcissistic. And so that was their normal. They learned how to live with that. They learned how to get along with that. That felt right after a while. That was their normal. And so as much as they might have hated mom and dad, their subconscious brain had built a template that these are the people you relate to. These are the people you have the skills to relate to well and to survive with. When you get to adult life, you now, without realizing it, are attracted to a narcissist because it fits the template. Another piece to it is, to me, shame attracts shame. And so what you have in a narcissistic relationship is the narcissist has deep, deep shame that they have tried to compensate for by acting like they're superior to everybody. Who they are attracted to is people with deep shame who feel inferior to everybody. And so superior attracts inferior. And that's where the narcissist will come in and try to rescue you. And you want to be rescued because you feel inferior. And so both have major shame issues. They just have compensated in different ways. One has gone to superior, one's gone to inferior, but now the shame attracts each other. And so until the people deal with their shame issues, they will continue to be attracted to somebody else with deep shame issues. So that is kind of an overview of the whole narcissism issue. So let me go now to some of the major questions that come up. What's your best advice on healing and recovery from narcissistic abuse? So what I would say up front is understand it's going to be a long journey. That narcissists, part of that needing to be superior is they got to keep devaluing you, putting you down. And there's a real gaslighting process where they're taking your self-image and making it lower and lower and lower. They're making you feel less and less good about yourself until you get to the point where you have zero backbone, you can't stand up for yourself, you give them all the power in your life to think, to perceive. And so they have a real slow process of eroding whatever self-respect you have. And so healing that doesn't happen overnight. That is a slow, gradual rebuilding that I have value, that my needs matter, that I'm just as important as everybody else, that I can think for myself. That takes a lot of time. It's possible. And we just watch hundreds of clients all the time where we see growth in this area, but it is a slow process. That's what I'm getting at. So I would really suggest for somebody that's coming out of narcissistic abuse to get help through therapy, through a program like our LIFT program, where you can get really focused teaching, coaching therapists that are going to help you work through these core issues of shame, your fear of abandonment, your codependency tendencies, so that you can really begin to heal yourself. That becomes so very, very important. So there is hope. So somebody asked this as well. Is recovery from a gaslit marriage possible for a person who's been abused? And I just want to emphasize again, yes. To me, there's always hope, but it takes time and it takes a lot of work. Next question. How can I deal with a narcissistic neighbor, someone I can't get away from? And so we get this a lot with a narcissistic boss, a narcissistic father that I still have a relationship with, even though I'm an adult now, but I still got to see him at Christmas and all of that. Narcissistic neighbor, narcissistic police person in our community. So we're going to run into narcissists. That's, to me, the reality of what life is. And so I can't just avoid them. It's learning how to provide safety for myself, to provide boundaries. And this is where it can get really tricky. And in many cases, it can be case by case. But what I would say, number one, is what narcissists try to do is act like they respect your boundaries, act like they respect you, but then try to engage you in a conversation, a chat. And what they're looking to do is gain some influence in your thinking. And they want to drop things into your thinking that might confuse you, that might make you second guess your own thinking. They're always playing a little game to gain some power in your thinking. And so the less you can have to do with them, the better. Because everything that comes out of their mouth is designed to distort truth. It's designed to contain some truth, but some lies. And it's designed to sound convincing enough, but lead to confusing you. And so just be aware that we call this gray rocking. This is where I'm polite, but I'm not going to engage in dialogue. I'm not going to engage in friendly conversation. I'm not going to act like we're friends or we're buddies. And one of the things that narcissists often try to do is position themselves as a buddy. And they try to engage in banter, and they try to engage in fun conversation. But it always is leading to them trying to gain the upper hand. And so they're not capable of connection. They're not capable of love. They're not capable of empathy or true friendship. It's just outside of their reality, because for them to get capable of that, they would have to deal with their shame. They would have to let down all their defenses and go against the very things they shut down. They'd have to become vulnerable again, authentic again, trust again. They're not willing to do that. That's too scary for them. And so they try to play the game of all those things and act like they're doing it, but it's all a front. And so the more boundaries that you can have, the better. Okay, this is where, to me, then it gets tricky, because some narcissists, so let's say your neighbor, your dad, they might kind of respect some of your boundaries. Or let's say that you have children with a narcissist, but now you're out of the relationship, but you're co-parenting. So you still have to have contact with your ex, the narcissist. They might act like they respect some of your boundaries, but they're always looking to play a bit of a game on you and play with your head. And so you have to be really, really careful. And so they might try to draw you into some drama. They might accuse you of stuff. They might post something about you that they know is going to push your buttons. So let me give you an example. If you were to talk to my wife, she would share very freely that her dad was a pure narcissist. And when we were first married, what I would see every time we went to visit, and they lived 2,000 miles away, so I only saw them once or twice a year. But every time we would go and visit, within 3 to 5 days, her dad and Kim would have a fight. So when they first went, Kim would go back to being a little girl with daddy, trying to please daddy, codependent, and do whatever daddy wanted, until 3 to 5 days when she's getting tired of daddy not hearing her or seeing her or getting her, and feeling used by daddy, and it was all about whatever daddy wanted, and daddy pouting if he didn't get what he wanted. And so they would have this fight, and dad would often push her buttons and say little things that she would react to, and then they'd go at it. He would twist stuff and make her feel it was her fault, she was the problem, and she'd go away and feel terrible. And so one day I just said to her, okay, here's the pattern that I'm seeing. Every time we visit your dad, I can predict 3 to 5 days, there's going to be a blowout. I can predict your dad's going to push your button. You're going to respond this way. How about next time, 3 to 5 days, when your dad pushes your buttons, you just walk away and don't respond? And she said, okay, I'm going to give it a try. And she didn't realize how hard it was going to be to resist the pull of when those buttons got pushed. Everything in her wanted to go and fight it out with her dad, but she resisted the pull and walked away. Well, that threw her dad for a loop, because now she wasn't playing the normal game. He wasn't having power. He didn't know what to do. So he tried other tactics, and Kim just kept walking away, wouldn't get drawn into the drama. And so what you have to realize is part of the supply is the narcissist creates drama through cruelty and disrespect. And then you engage, you get drawn into it, and then you feed them what they want. You become their supply. And so if you don't get drawn into the drama, if they're trying to trigger you, they're trying to push your buttons, and you don't respond, that silences a whole bunch of things in a hurry. And so it's really realizing that you have to have good internal boundaries in dealing with a narcissist, because they're going to poke at you, push you, try to trigger you, try to get you to respond. And you just have to be able to not give into it, not get drawn into the drama. One of the things that Kim and I did was, so Kim would phone, early on, would phone her parents every day, and they'd talk on the phone. And almost every day, her dad would take a little shot at her. Kim would get off the phone at the end and just feel bad. And it would trigger her shame and feed her shame. And so I said, why do you have to call them every day? Like, I talk to my parents once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks. Why do you have to call every day? And again, it was Kim's shame. She was still looking for her narcissist dad to validate her, her narcissist dad to give her full attention and love, which was never going to happen. So she agreed to start calling her parents once a week. And then she got to the point where if her dad started getting disrespectful, she'd just quickly end the call. And basically, I'm not going to let you play your games. I'm not going to feed into my shame issues. And that began to change things. And then after a while, she started only calling them every couple of weeks. And then if we went to visit, we'd only go and spend a couple hours in the day instead of the whole day. Just again, so that we were changing the dynamics. We were changing the amount of opportunity her father had to try to wear Kim down. And so it's really realizing that they still see you as a pawn on a chessboard, and they're trying to manipulate you and move you around. And so you have to outsmart them. And so one of the things that, to me, for many people that have been in a narcissist relationship, you've tried to leave it, but the narcissist isn't going to let it happen. They're still trying to hurt you. They're still trying to bleed you dry financially. They're trying to take you to court for the kids so they get full possession. They're doing all of their stuff as their act of revenge of still maintaining power. This is where, to me, you have to work on two different levels. You got to somehow deal with the practical, painful stuff that the narcissist is throwing at you, but you also got to deal with your deep issues that drew you into this in the first place. And so Rebecca Zung, if you haven't heard of Rebecca, she's got her own YouTube channel and website, but she started counseling people who are in narcissistic relationships and has built this whole organizations around helping people coming out of narcissistic relationships. So if you look at what a narcissist is doing when he first meets somebody that he thinks is inferior, he's love bombing them, he's trying to get them to share and open up to them. Everything that you share with a narcissist, they're using it now as ammunition against you. They're using it now as leverage against you. They're building leverage. And so the more vulnerable you are, they might invite it, they might act like they appreciate it so much, but they're clapping their hands inside because they're gaining powerful leverage over you. Many people think, well, if I just reason with the narcissist as to why I need to leave, if I just have a discussion and get them to validate that they hurt me, then maybe they'll see it. No, they won't. They'll just use that to twist everything. So the only way to break free from a narcissist is not through reason or logic. It's not through getting them to own their stuff, because they never will. It's you have to build leverage against them. You have to threaten something that's very important to them, one of their supplies. And so that's where Rebecca Zung has actually got a ChatGPT program that basically allows you to keep track of every text, every phone call, every scheduled visit with the kids. Were they late? How did they respond? So that you're documenting every single thing. And through that, you're building leverage about the person's true character, about what they're not presenting to the public, that you can then take and use with a lawyer or whoever to gain leverage against them. So that's a slow process, but to me, it's such a necessary, sadly, for some people, is you have to document everything. And this ChatGPT program enables you to do that. And then it knows what to look for to build leverage against them. And it's helped many, many people. And so sadly, it's just one of the realities that is part of this whole discussion. So let me just speak to another question, that is, how does a person respond to a narcissistic family member when they say, I'm sorry? How do you know if it's sincere? So narcissists, if they feel that you're going to discard them instead of them discarding you, you discarding them is going to make them look bad. So they do not want that to happen. So they will do a couple different tactics. Number one, they'll say, I'm sorry. And then they'll go, I thought you were a person that was taught to be healthy, you're supposed to forgive. And they'll twist the idea of forgiveness to use it to manipulate you. What I want people to understand is being sorry is not saying the words, I'm sorry. Being sorry is the action of owning that I did wrong and I'm going to change. And I can't tell if you're sorry or sincere by your words. I have to wait 3 to 6 months to see if you're actually changing. And then if I forgive you, that doesn't mean I let you back in my life. That doesn't mean I don't set boundaries with you. That doesn't mean I let you abuse me again. Forgiveness requires boundaries, especially with people that have proved to be untrustworthy, have proved to be abusive. And so narcissists use all the elements of love in a twisted way as weapons. They don't use them as genuine expressions of love. That is so important to understand. The second thing a narcissist will try to do to influence you to keep them, so they'll say, I'm sorry, but they never own it or really change. They might change what I call crisis change. They'll change their external behavior for a little bit until you take the heat off of them, until the crisis is kind of past. So it's crisis management. They're not willing to change at a deep, deep level. They just change superficially for a temporary period of time until you're off their back. So that's why with a narcissist, you got to wait 3 to 6 months to see if this change is actually genuine, and if they're going beyond just superficial stuff to actually wanting to look at their deeper issues. Because if they're not willing to look at their deeper issues, they're not truly wanting to change. The third thing they'll do is they'll say, let's go for counseling. And what you find with that is they'll go to a counselor with you, but then they're so good at manipulating and kind of their charismatic, warm personality that they can turn on, that they will start manipulating the counselor to take their side, to see them as the victim, to see them as poor you, you're in a terrible marriage, and to gang up against you. And so counseling to them is not a way to get help, it's a way to actually manipulate even more. And so it rarely works. So what you have to see, to me, with a narcissist is how many true narcissists ever change? Very, 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 very few. 1% maybe. And in order for that to happen, they have to lose all their supplies. That means their life has to be super painful, super amount of pain they can't resolve. Nobody they can replace those supplies with. And they've got to have kind of nothing they can wiggle out. They can't wiggle out of their pain this time like they normally do. Some might be willing to say, maybe the problem's me. But that is very, very rare. And so that's why, sadly, in the pure narcissist, you can't have a relationship with them. They're not going to change. So you just have to separate and have very good boundaries and protect yourself. And don't keep going back to that initial, it was so good in the beginning, they were so different. That was all an act. And so for those who get to a point where they're saying the problem's me, the process of them changing, the shame is so deep, the wounds are so deep, there's been so much denial for so many years that the process is super slow. And it takes a very skilled therapist to begin working through that with them. And so don't think that you can help them get through that, or that you should wait around until they get better, because then are they doing it for the right reasons, or just to try to hang on to you, is part of the question that comes up. So all of that is to say, narcissists, sadly, true narcissists, the shame and the pain is so deep that most are not willing to go there. But if you've been in a relationship with one and have been wounded by one, yes, there's lots of hope for you. If you see that you have narcissist tendencies when you're triggered, that doesn't mean you're a narcissist. That just means, okay, I got to learn what to do when those things get triggered. Because when I get triggered, all of a sudden my expectations of others go up. I get angrier at others. I lash out at others. And that's when I can do a lot of damage, especially those closest to me. And that's where I have my deepest regrets. And so I need to develop tools to help me when I get triggered and my limbic brain and my narcissistic tendencies want to come out in a heartbeat. That I need tools in that nanosecond to get myself de-escalated back into my cortex, back into healthy living. One thing I would say in addition to that is, when you're triggered, if you're married, what you find when you're triggered is your thinking gets distorted, and you think you're seeing everything accurately, that it's everybody else's fault, but it's very distorted. And if somebody, when you're triggered, tries to reason with you and point out that you're not seeing it accurately, that probably will trigger you even more, because to you they're saying you're stupid, all of that. So you need to be able to get yourself regulated, de-escalated, back into your cortex before you're able to objectively look at the situation again. So there's one final thing I'll say, and then we'll close. Vanessa Reiser has written a book called Narcissistic Abuse. It just came out. We just did a podcast with Vanessa. She was in a narcissistic abusive relationship, eventually got out of it, began helping friends, now has her own organization that helps thousands of people. She runs across the state of New York every year in a wedding dress to raise money for narcissistic abuse, and has written this book called Narcissistic Abuse. It is an excellent book. And she really just delineates it in great detail from all kinds of different perspectives to help people deal with the practical issues of dealing with narcissistic abuse, dealing with a narcissist that you can't quite get rid of. I don't know that she fully has got the trauma part, but she's got everything else really, really well. So if you're wanting more information, I would really encourage you to get that book. So that was, in 1 hour, a whole ton of information that I hope is helpful. It might lead to more questions. If it does, just email them to us, and we might do another session just with follow-up questions that have come out of this one, because it is such a big topic. And it's so easy to kind of get locked in on just one thing that I've said and miss a bunch of other things. So please send us any further questions that have come out of this. But thank you for being with us. Hopefully that was helpful. And if you are struggling in this narcissistic abuse or relationship, please get help. It is available, and there's no shame in doing that. So thank you. Have a great rest of your day.